Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to another edition of TBR. And I'm George Binns. And this evening we're getting to meet with the State Senator, Joan Lovely. Welcome, Joan.
Thank you, George.
And so, talking about the state of the state, where things are going, what's been happening downtown in Boston?
So we started our session back on January 1st.
Yep.
And then we're all inaugurated. The governor gave her State of the State almost the third week in January, which is about that time, and then she revealed her budget. So that's called House 1 in the first year. And she's outlined what her spending proposals are.
Yeah.
The House will follow in April with its budget, and the Senate will follow in May with its budget, our budget. And then the differences between those budgets will get worked out in conference committee. But the governor's budget, she's got a pretty, robust budget. Some cost increases. She's looking for some tax increases. That doesn't mean that will automatically go into the House or Senate budget.
No. Everybody has their own idea on what needs to be done and
Right.
how they're going to finance it. But I guess one of the things that keeps showing up in the news is the state budget has been growing kind of dramatically over the last couple of years. 50% in the last 7 years, 37% since 2019. And the governor's new budget is up another 7%.
Right.
So I guess the challenges are catching up, that we're getting involved in doing a lot of stuff, and it's starting to cost big dollars. And one of the concerns, I guess, is the millionaires tax was supposed to bring in more money, but you start to wonder, is it driving people out of the state?
So the millionaire's tax is actually exceeding benchmark for the amount of money that we thought it would raise. We thought it would raise about $1 billion. It's actually closer to $2 billion.
Oh, really?
So we're not seeing a lot of out-migration from the upper echelon of our taxpayers. Not to say it won't happen, but so far it hasn't. With regard to the governor's budget and her 7% increase, I can only speak for the Senate. We're looking at about a 2.5% increase. It's a very modest increase based on the revenue projections that we receive in the fall. So in December, actually, so early winter, in December we have a budget revenue hearing where we listen to economists and budget analysts and experts on what does it look like for the upcoming year. And then in the Senate we base our budget on that. So we're looking at about a 2.5% increase. I hope we're not looking at any new taxes. We just did a tax decrease package in the last session, which I think put a dent. It helps, and I do think that we don't need to be raising taxes.
Good. So we get into this situation where there's a lot of demands on the state, and I guess the migrants is one of the ones that's really driving people up a wall, because maybe they're going to stay, maybe they're going to get shipped out. That's another wrinkle in the problem. But this state law about right to shelter, that brings on a lot of demands, and it gets to be kind of a dicey situation where things like mass and cast, which has been going on for I don't know how long, and now all of a sudden a bunch of immigrants show up, and they seem to be getting priority. So there's a lot of demand on the system, and the housing situation is not the best. And where are you going to put them?
Right. So the EA system, Emergency Assistance Program, was put in under Governor Dukakis. So we're talking about the early 80s when that was put into place. It was put into place to house homeless families. You have to have a minor child to be able to qualify. When I took office in 2013, we had an enormous amount of homeless families. They were in hotels and motels across the Commonwealth.
Yeah.
I visited a lot of them. Terrible for families, very expensive to maintain. It's not a good program. So under Governor Baker, he was able to rework the program, get people out of the hotels and motels, double, triple them up in apartments with supports, and we were able to get, move away from that type of initiative. But here we are, we're back at it. And our hotels and motels are full again, although now the governor has put into place to empty out the hotels and motels because it is very expensive. Let me just tell you about who's homeless, who's living in shelter and hotels and motels. About 60% are Massachusetts citizens, U.S. citizens who find themselves homeless in this economy.
Yeah.
In this, the rents are crazy.
Oh, yeah.
So they're homeless. About 40% are migrants who are here documented. The only way you can be eligible for the program is if you're documented. So we're talking refugees from Haiti, from Venezuela, and some other countries that people are here. Those numbers, actually, the migrant numbers are dropping faster than the mass residence numbers.
Yeah.
People they're here, they want to get their working papers, and they are. And they're getting out, and they're either staying in the state, or a lot of them are leaving the state.
Oh, really?
Yep. They may have family in other states where they may be going, or support systems. So we're starting to see that the program shrink, and we're intentionally making the program shrink. It's too expensive, and it's not a good way to do it.
So would it be a better way to, is that one of the considerations for the coming budget of?
Yes, it's to cap the stay. So if you're coming here, say you're a Mass resident, and I'm hearing these stories every day. I have constituents calling me weekly that are living in motels along Route 1. I have one family, a Beverly family, a mom and two little ones. She's been in a motel for a year. Yeah. What's the issue? She has a Corey. So she has a criminal background. And so she's not rentable to a landlord who looks at that Corey and says, I don't want to take the risk.
Yeah.
So we're trying to work with someone like her to try to get her stabilized. It's hard. And then we look at our migrant families who are here and say, okay, where do you want to work? How do you have to go to work. You have to be able to support yourself. So again, getting working papers and getting people out and sustained. That's the program. Now we've capped the program will be capped at 4,000 families, which is originally what it was intended for.
Okay.
Didn't have a cap, right? They never needed a cap. Now we need a cap.
Yeah. So where can they work? Where are the job opportunities?
Well, I will tell you, in Salem, one of the dorms at Salem State was empty. So about 300 families moved into this dorm. And over the course of 18 months, they all became, got their working papers. And Salem Hospital has the first complete census of workers in the hospital. Food service, laundry, all those back of the house jobs that not everybody wants to do.
Yeah.
But these are grateful people who want to do that work. And now Salem Hospital has full employment. So that's an example of the types of jobs.
Well, that brings up another issue that trying to get people into positions where they can support a family and support themselves.
Right.
The back of the house jobs that you talk about, they're minimum wage and not much more. There's another issue that comes up that people who picked the wrong degree, major, or didn't quite do well in school, and they need to go back to community college. And there's a lot of emphasis that, hey, you can get some nursing training there and get a better move up the economic ladder a little bit from some of these things. And
Right.
Is that program working?
It's working. So I actually just spoke with President Keenan at Salem State University because a lot of these community college students, so they're getting free community college. And then once they get that associate's degree, they are then transferring into Salem State. And Salem State is now seeing a positive number of students. Usually they were losing 200 students a year that were not re-enrolling, and now they are. A lot of them are Pell eligible, which means they can get some grants to be able to go to school once they get to Salem State. That's what we want. We want people to be able to get their education so they can get good jobs and be self-sufficient. Because you're right, minimum wage jobs, you're gonna have to work two full-time jobs just to make it, and that's not sustainable. So we want people in the workforce, especially in nursing and nursing assistants. COVID, a lot of people retired. They said, "Yep, I'm at the end of my career. I'm going to retire," and they left a hole. So we
Well,
need to fill
that
'em.
too, and plus elderly housing is a really strong demand for medical help.
Right.
Not necessarily a full-blown nurse, but some sort of medical training. And with the aging population, that is a growing field, whether we like that or not.
It is. I'm a baby boomer, and we're just getting, aging up. And at what point do we need services,
Yeah.
and will those services be available? We want to make sure they are. And you're right. It may not be full nursing home care. What type of care do you need? Can you stay in your home? Do you double up in your home? We're actually looking at a home care model that we put almost like a group home, but a group home for seniors, where you have a 3 or 4 bedroom. You have 3 or 4 seniors that are living in that home, maybe in their own community. They can't afford to stay in their home anymore, but they want to stay in their community. So we're looking at that model as well.
Yeah, there's a group in town, the women who are in business for themselves or in professional things, and one of the ladies in that group is doing exactly that. She's got a model where she's trying to develop homes for elderly people that where are you going to go?
Right.
And you don't really want to go into Brooksby Village or one of these.
If you can afford it.
Yeah, that's another thing too.
Right.
And maybe you don't need the full care of a nursing home type of environment,
Right.
but you need somebody to come in once in a while to check on your meds, make sure your prescriptions are right and you're taking them all, and
Right.
help you with some of the physical things like getting dressed. It's
Right.
sometimes getting to be a challenge.
Right.
So there is a growing opportunity there. So I think it's good that the state is working on it. And back up a little bit, you said they can get this education for free at the community college level.
Community college level is now free. We have initiated a free community college, and we're seeing people apply. Now you have to keep your grades up. You have to. You have to be serious about it, a serious student. You don't have to get all A's, but you have to be serious about wanting to get that degree. So you meet certain parameters, and and so we have seen enrollment really spike in our community colleges. So that's good.
And if you want to eventually get a nursing program going at the state's level,
Right.
eventually you're going to have to pass a license exam.
That's right.
So it's not just keep going to school and eventually it's handed to you.
Right.
It's an ongoing process.
That's right.
Yeah. So.
But I wanted to just go back really quickly to this home care model. I want to give a shout out to Dignity Alliance. This is an initiative, a nonprofit that has emerged over the last few years. And a matter of fact, Paul Lanzikos, who is a Beverly resident, helped spearhead this with a former state senator who I served with, and so they are working on this on all senior issues. So Paul was the Elder Affairs Secretary under Dukakis, and then he ran North Shore Elder Services. He's now retired. I think he's busier than ever now.
Yeah.
But bringing all this experience and expertise to the table as this growing aging population emerges, and so we're looking at that with Dignity Alliance.
Well, as we get into these issues, free education is great, but you got to pay for the school someplace.
Yep.
and get back to the tax issue, that every year the taxes seem to be going up, and the list of proposals by the governor to increase taxes in lots of places, including the candy tax.
Yeah.
I got a kick out of that when they had a comment in the paper about it. And just before Valentine's Day, they want to raise the candy tax.
Right.
But it gets to the point of what can't you tax? When does this all stop? How do we get something under control?
You know, I was just looking at the numbers this morning, George, and, you know, we're 41st, so number 41 in the country in competitiveness. We really want to be in the top 10. We're not. We're in the bottom 10.
Yeah.
We need to move that needle. And if we just continue to tax our way out of the problem, we're just going to continue to you know, just keep growing in that number. We don't want to be 50. We want to be competitive. We want to be in the middle or better.
Yeah.
And I think that's where we need to work towards. You know, when you're raising taxes, it's usually to either, you know, meet the budget demand or perhaps come up with some new initiatives that you want to do. I get it.
Yeah.
I get it. But at some point, there is a breaking point. Now, Massachusetts, we're a 5% flat, you know, income tax.
Yeah.
That's one of the best in the country,
Yeah.
except for Florida and New Hampshire, where
There's no income tax
there's
at
no
all.
income tax.
Yeah.
But their real estate taxes are very high, you know. So
They're gonna get the money out of you
They put it
someplace.
locally, right? Exactly.
Yeah.
But I don't think that we can tax and spend our way out of it. We need to be very careful. Now, I don't think we gut government either. You know, I'm concerned about the Medicaid program. This is our mass health program.
Yeah, that's the most expensive
It
part of
is.
the budget.
It is by far, and it you know, it takes care of a lot of people with their health insurance, but also, you know, I'll give you an example. I have some family who fall under the autism umbrella, and they need care because they can't care for themselves.
Yeah.
If they didn't have their parents or group homes, they would not be able to care for themselves.
Yeah.
So Medicaid pays for that. You know, so I just want to make sure that we're taking care of our most vulnerable population,
Yeah.
those that absolutely cannot take care of themselves.
So that gets to be the tough decision as to what can you handle, what can we take care of, and you got to take care of it yourself.
Yeah.
And that dividing line is very, very fuzzy. And I think that's probably one of the things that drives the state, because everybody says, oh, we can't do that. We can't let those poor people go. We can't take this.
Yeah.
And pretty soon, where are we going to fund this thing from? And it gets to be a real challenge. So I wish you guys luck downtown.
Thank you. You know, we really dive in and to really understand, you know, decisions that we make. And, you know, they're not made in a vacuum. I get hundreds and hundreds of emails every week from the district, people telling us how they feel. We record every single one of those so we can gauge how people are feeling about spending, about tax increases, about tax decreases, whatever it might be,
Yeah,
and any particular issues. So we assemble that, and we're doing that now for this upcoming budget.
So what do you think the big problem is that you?
You know, well, right now it's, you know, with the new administration in Washington, a lot of changes at the
Yeah.
national level. How will that trickle down to the states? So we're paying very close attention to that, because every state is going to have to react to be able to keep programs going. And so you know, we seem to be getting a new initiative almost daily, and we're watching it because we need to know how to make sure Massachusetts stays whole.
Yeah, there's going to be a rough time as to this new approach of the president to, instead of trying to cut the fat little by little, and that's been tried in the past, and well, that seems like a good idea, but we can't do it right now. Pretty soon nothing happens, and he's taking the opposite approach of
Yeah.
kill it all and we'll let what really needs come back,
Right.
kind of thing. And you see some of these anecdotes of, guess what we found this time? And you start to wonder, oh, gee, maybe we have some problems. And you start to wonder, do we have a similar situation here at the state level where really, do we really need to do that? Or are we doing it the best way? And one of the things here in Beverly is that been bugging me for quite some time is the two bridges that are out, and it's taken 13 years to finally get them fixed. If that's what they're projecting, what they actually happens, that's another story.
Yeah.
And as we were talking before the start of the show, there's so many of these different entities that have veto power, and you were starting to rattle off half a dozen, and probably could throw in
Right.
another half dozen of them too. And the question is, how do you get something done
Yeah.
in this kind of environment? And one of the numbers that shook me was, if you start to look at the permitting process and all the regulations that go with that, it can impact the cost of a new building by 24%. And we have a housing problem. I
Yes.
think everybody's got one right now.
Yes.
But with this kind of an environment, how do we get around some of these things, or somehow or other simplify the system? And again, I don't know where to go in the state, and how does this happen? How do we can simplify things? And do we really need all these regulations?
There's so particular to the bridges. There's so many layers of permitting, you
Yeah.
know, at the state level, and then at the federal level,
Yeah.
and then Coast Guard, and waterways, and are there endangered species?
Yeah.
Whether that's a live, you know, a fish or whatever it might be, or eelgrass or whatever it might
Eelgrass,
be.
yeah.
Lots. There's so many layers, and what we've been really pushing for with, you know, getting these bridges fast-tracked is to get all this permitting going at the same time. So, you know, don't do this and then stop, and then somebody do this and stop, you know, and we've been saying do it at the same time.
Yeah.
And that's that's been the push at the state level to the federal level, working with all of our partners, and it's frustrating because the permitting is 2, 3, 4 years.
Yeah.
Then you build a bridge. So it is tough. But I have to tell you, I got to give a shout out to MassDOT. They are all over this, and they are really making this happen as fast as they can, even though it feels painfully slow.
Yeah. Well, it is. And I think one of the things that I keep thinking back to is, I think it was about 1995 or something like that. There was a real serious hurricane that came up the coast, and it took out a bridge on I-95 in Connecticut, and they put in a Bailey Bridge, and they had it running.
What year was that?
I think it was in 95.
Really, a Bailey Bridge. So, you know, I've learned something through this process, what a Bailey Bridge is, right? The
Yeah.
military will build a Bailey Bridge.
Yeah.
And they can put it in a day or two.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, the neat thing about a Bailey Bridge is that every piece of it is picked up by somebody. It requires no heavy equipment to move anything. And the biggest piece on it is these long panels that you put on the sides of the bridge. And the biggest one of them, it gets picked up by 8 guys and walked into place. And I know for sure because I was one of those
Oh,
8
you were
guys
there?
one time.
Okay. Okay.
So a little personal knowledge on that
Yep.
thing. And the other one is, when I was in the Army, I was in the 17th Engineer Battalion in 2nd Armored Division. And we had as our bridge company a floating bridge set. So I keep thinking that, okay, the Kernwood Bridge, oh, just take that thing out, put in a floating bridge. And again, it's one of these things, you don't exactly do it overnight, but on a civilian basis, it's pretty quick to get something in temporary.
Yeah.
And I mean, this is the kind of different kinds of thinking that I think we have to get involved with
Yeah.
to make some of these things happen. I remember when the DOT first started talking about these bridges, the reason they couldn't do anything very quickly is because they had 200 other bridges that were out. And so how does the system get so far behind?
Right. Right.
And
You know, I can't can't say that I really understand bridge inspections. It's not my background. You know, there's bridge inspections,
yeah,
and then there's bridge inspections.
Yep.
And, you know, so by the time the Hall Whitaker failed, it was that finally this bridge inspection that said, whoa, wait a minute,
Yeah, yeah.
pedestrian access only.
Yeah.
And here we are. One good thing is we have the money for the Hall Whitaker Bridge.
Yeah.
That's in place. And we rely heavily on the federal government. These are hundreds of millions of dollars
Oh, yeah.
to be able to do these. And for the Kernwood, I asked the question, is the money there? The answer was, we are planning it with the money being there. So
Yeah.
you know, under Biden and you know, the Build Back Better, that's where a lot of this infrastructure money has been allocated. So I hope it still sticks.
Yeah.
Kernwood, Hall Whitaker Bridge is in the bank. Kernwood Bridge should be in the bank.
Yeah.
That money.
So as we winding down our half hour, you know, we get to the point of where do we go from here? And there's so many more issues to talk about. So would like to invite you back again to continue the discussion.
Let's do a regular segment.
Yeah.
I'd love to be able to come in, talk to your viewers, and I'd love to hear from your viewers. You know, the more people I hear from, the better informed I am when I'm making these
Yeah.
decisions.
Well, as I mentioned at the end of most of the shows, that my email address is at the front end of the show and it's at the tail end of the show. So if anybody out there wants to comment, you can do it. And if it's something that we should discuss, I can pass it on to you.
Great.
But your email address is,
It's joan.lovely@masenate.gov.
so that gets to your office and it gets added into this collection
Yes.
that you're working on.
Yep.
What are the hot issues? Where should the emphasis be
Right.
placed?
Exactly.
So that's it.
You know, I'm a Beverly girl. I care deeply about this community, and I still have family here. You know, a Salem boy stole me over the bridge 40 plus years ago, but Beverly's in my heart.
Good. Well, thank you very much for joining us this evening, and we'll have to do this again soon.
Look forward to it.
Thank
Thank
you.
you, George.
And good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and have fun. And like I said, if you've got a comment, send me an email. And if you've got a longer statement you want to make, there's room for you here at the table. Thanks for joining us, and stay tuned. We'll be back.